So massive thanks for joining myself, whether you're joining myself live or at a later time. Hopefully any minute now I'm going to have Michael Booth join myself, and we're going to focus on a number of different topics today. So good, there you are. Michael is actually much more awake than I am by a long way, so it's raining as well, so I have to do the interview inside. So I was hoping to do it outside, but it's a bit of a shame. So I'm just waiting to go live with you, Mickey. So good morning.
Sorry, I'm just tweaking you around, Brendan. There we are. He's the main man. Yeah, very well, thank you. Very good to be here.
So yeah, thanks for joining myself. Massive thanks. I have to admit, you're probably more awake than I am. I had a late night, to be fair. My late nights are not that late, but they are during COVID. So I was on a Zoom call, as most people are. I think until about 9ish, to be fair. And I say it's not that late, but because, of course, you're looking at a screen, it's a little bit different, particularly if your focus is literally looking at screens. Is a completely different ball game to a physical meeting. And you know, of course, people do tell you not to look at screens late and so forth. Look, in terms of what we're going to cover, so you gave me some notes, which are fairly useful. Do you want to just introduce yourself to the audience as well?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brendan. And I think a lot of people also have a lot of Zoom conferences and a lot of Zoom parties are the way at the moment. So I spoke to a few friends and they're having a Friday night Zoom party. So good on them for celebrating on Zoom. Using it not just for work.
I'm not sure I could do a Zoom party, but it was supposed to be a Zoom bar after the webinar. And I have to admit, I could not. I literally managed to get into the Zoom bar, and I thought, no, I need some sleep. So, because some things worked in the old days, but you know, this is the new day, and of course, people created different habits, and we're going to be looking at today, just a heads up for our listeners as well. Massive thanks to Levis for joining us this morning. What should be included in an effective workout? Feeling loss is more simple than you think. Is that the name of your book? It's a good book title, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah, there we go. We have to keep it hush hush so no one else steals that.
Yeah. Want to speed up the progress, change the variables, and types of workouts to focus on in the lockdown. So I'll leave it over to you, Michael, for the moment.
Yeah, sure. Well, good for everyone on the call today. For those who don't know, my name's Michael Booth. I'm a personal trainer in the fitness industry. Have been for quite some time, for just over 15 years, I think it is now. And
I thought you said 50 years.
I'll tell you my secret later.
Yeah.
God, that would be a scary one.
I don't think even Charles Poliquin's has he been in the fitness industry 50 years?
Crikey.
Not quite.
Probably. He was probably like a little kid at the time, but probably still bench pressing, knowing Charles at that young age. So it's been a while. But then I didn't actually start in the industry, for those who don't know. I was in the field of arts. But I always did sport, for many years before that.
You played county level tennis.
Yeah, I played county tennis, and in fact, even before that, from a very young age, I swam for the county as well for Ealing. So that was one of my other passions. I started very early, got into sport through my parents. They wanted me to stay fit, and as a pool was very close to me.
What type of stroke did you like?
Well, I liked all of them, but particularly crawl and butterfly were the two that
Really, you were into butterfly as well?
Yeah, I did. And in fact, it's one of those that as a child, it's a little bit easier because you're very light. So you hold yourself up in the water. And so you're not like, when adults get a bit older, they tend to sink. But it's just one of that, I liked the movement patterns and in fact, I like all of them, but they were the two that I really took to. but particularly crawl was my one. And yes, I did that for a few years, and before I got into tennis. So stayed fit very young. But for those who were new or not been here before, just wanted to talk today. First off, about what should be in a plan or an effective training plan, because at the moment probably people got a different type of time. I shouldn't say they've got more time, but a different type of time or a different type of situation they may find in. And so they might be utilising their time in a different ways, not necessarily maybe commuting to work, so they might have that extra hour to work out. One thing I would say, particularly in a training plan, is to try and keep it strength-based. So often people would often say to me, there's so much to do and so much stuff online, where do I start? And I would always go back to keep it strength-based. So keep the movements related to strength. Try and avoid the long haul, I'm not saying don't run or don't cycle. They're very good forms, but incorporate weight training if you can. It's particularly important. There's different methods you can use at the moment. Body weight training. If you don't, there's different types of equipment you can use, like resistance bands, dumbbells, body weight training. Keep it at that, particularly because you want to build the muscle on the body, and the more you have, the less problems you'll have in the long run. So that's one of the most important points I would say. If you don't know where to start,
I was going to say, Michael, we've got some listeners joining us. Look, you may be wondering, when I talk most of the time on property, why am I with Michael Booth? And the reason is simple. Your fitness, your health does make a huge difference to being an investor, being a landlord, being a developer, whether it's literally so drastic that you end up in a hospital and you can't do anything for weeks or days. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's days. Maybe it's not even that drastic. It might literally just be, getting the odd colds a bit too much, so you're out of sync for literally a day. It depends how far you want to go. I don't want to be too graphic, and particularly during COVID-19. But that's why I've asked Michael to come on board. I've asked a few other people to come on board as well. So tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, so I can have a sleep in. It's me who's done the 8:30, to be fair. But I could have done with a sleep in. But at least it got me out of bed, which was a good thing. So look, tomorrow I'm with Grace of Melt Property, talking about her favourite topic, which isn't my favourite topic, but her favourite topic, and she's on a panel on Monday morning. She's talking about business efficiency, business optimization, which I know Grace is passionate about. She gave a fantastic presentation, National Development Summit. Look, on Friday morning, I can't get Daryl Norcutt to use Instagram yet. I haven't been able to persuade him. So I've got to use old-fashioned technology called Facebook and live stream my Zoom to Facebook. So that's why it's been lovely. I do like Instagram, to be fair, but Daryl's not on Instagram. He's hardly ever on Facebook, to be fair. But that's Friday. And just a heads up for the listener out there, on Monday the 22nd, I've managed to convince myself to do a whole week long of events. So it will be interesting, to say the least. I wasn't planning on doing it. I was planning on taking a break from these Monday property brunches. Every Monday for the last 11 weeks been going live, and I expected it to come to an end on a weekly basis, but people want to continue, so I've decided to stay until the 22nd, definitely 29th. I will get sleep in on that day. Sorry, Michael, but I just want to emphasize why it's so important, because people are probably thinking, when are we going to talk about property investing in this particular Instagram? And we're not, to be fair, but does it have an impact? Yes, it's got an impact on your whole life, really.
Yeah, and I would say a little bit more than that. Look, I've been to business networking events and all sorts, and so I do mix and mingle with people in all forms of life, and there's a whole saying, if you don't feel well, you won't do well. So you always have to feel good about something, particularly if you're you're just you want to have lots of energy and portray yourself. And it's very, very easy to. As often people don't really see the value of health until it's gone. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to get it back. So in all walks of life, I think we all want to be strong, fit, and healthy, because not only they're the things we say, but it's actually the performance it has on the brain, and our brain is where a lot of the things really originate from. So we always want to be mentally sharp, always in the morning. And that comes from working out. But there was a big link,
Even though this morning I'm definitely not sharp.
You're doing well, Brendan. Hang in there. You're doing well. You got through 5 minutes, so good on you. But so as I was saying before, guys, keep it strength based. It's not just the workout 1 hour that you're working out for. It's the impact of the next 23 hours that strength training done well will have on you. If you're a little bit unsure about where to start, just keep it isolation based. It means just do things like work on your technique of squats, lunges, and even shoulder press ups. Even learning how to pull. Right, you can also do compound, which is multiple exercises in one. But if you're unsure, just stick to those basically. I pretty much, when I start with a complete newbie in gyms, I just don't get them started anything fancy until they can demonstrate that they can actually push a decent weight, control the weight, and not move on from there. And I've had more thanks through people that have actually started on that process, because once you learn one skill, found to push, retract, and hold, it builds the muscle, but it also makes you burn a lot more body fat in the process. So I'm not saying don't go for your runs, but I'm not a huge fan of doing that before weight training. I always think it's better to do weight training and then finish off with your cardiovascular work.
No, I'm still listening. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and the other thing to add in as well, if you can make it very straightforward, just get a pen and paper. Try and avoid your tablets to put this down, because I find it's a lot more meaningful and effective when you just go back to notepad and pens. Tablets are good, but you don't tend to remember them that well. When on pen and paper you do, and you can either do full body or you can just do a split routine. But just focus on a few simple things done really, really well. Don't try and overcomplicate it for now. That comes from further down the line.
So do you want to just elaborate on that a bit more? I know you said use pen and paper. Use pen and paper. Is it a plan of action? Or what plan?
Yeah, it is. And if you think about, but in some ways, don't get me wrong, tablets, mobiles are great. They've made our world entirely different, and they will have revolutionized our world. However, I do find when it comes to remembering stuff, tablets aren't the best thing. We might type it down on our phones, but we don't really remember it as well until we actually write it down on pen and paper. It's the old-fashioned method, I think, that works well. Often some of the great people who come to gyms, or I've seen in the past, who are very, very dedicated, they always use pen and paper, because they say they can always remember what they did. And it's a lot more meaningful when your own handwriting is on there than just typing it into the phone. You tend to remember more what you did when you write it down on your notepad, and keep that as a journal, because what you want to document is how well you did, or how you go on. So if you did lunges, it was a bit choppy, write that down. And the more you get into that, you'll find that your workouts will improve.
Okay, so journaling.
Yeah. You don't need to. You can make it very simple. You can just have what the exercises you're going to do down the page. You set some reps, and then at the end of it, was I exhausted? Did I get to my completion? And just tick it off. There's nothing better that I find that sort of just ticking things off and just going through that way. You're more likely to perform better with your exercises, and you can see the progress a lot more meaningful to you.
So what you're saying is ideally have a plan of action before doing anything for the week or the month?
Yeah, exactly that. And I'll touch on that a bit later about how to write them down. But essentially, just going back down to actually putting them down. So you might have a list of 8 exercises. And for example, you might do 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps, just for argument's sake. Just keep that down. and just take note. Did you complete them and how well you did them? And then try and copy those the next day, because you'll find that the more you start to write this down, the more you'll get into it, and the more you won't go from exercise to exercise, diet to diet, bit by bit, and you get into the habit of what we call progress, which is often a forgotten art of mastering a skill versus just being, a one-hit wonder.
No, I'm listening. I'm just trying to get this camera to hold while I'm charging it as well. But,
That's all right.
I will have to work out the
That's
skill
all right.
another time. So, are we talking weekly, monthly, fortnightly? A massive thanks to those joining us. Ricky, I know you're joining us this morning. Look, it goes back to Pure Property tomorrow morning with Grace and myself. Grace of Melt Property. They're working on huge schemes in London, Gloucestershire as well. I've been to see their sites, but today it's working on us rather than working on sites as such.
Yeah. And the other thing to add to this, guys, is try and keep your plan. Try and always think quarterly. So if you're like you do in the business, I'm sure in property in the business world, we work in 4 quarters. The first 3 months, or where I like to say the first 12 weeks. It's actually no different in training. Short term is about, I would say the first 12 weeks. So work on a 12-week plan and also break that down to a monthly plan and then a weekly plan. You don't want to necessarily keep chopping and changing exercises, but you want to try and keep it consistent so you can see the improvements. You can vary like how you do them. That's a completely different thing, which we'll talk about with variables. But you want to be also track your progress. And I've had more, when I didn't do this earlier in my career, and I actually, I started out varying things out when I trained, I got more complaints from those who when I didn't track things or didn't go into the weight training process, versus now I get people just thanking me because they can see the changes through their body, because we're working on those old-fashioned but still really effective processes of progress and overload, which are one of the main things your body needs to adapt when you're working out.
So look, we've talked about it's more simple than you think. So that's about the journal, I take it.
It's more, because what you're essentially doing is you're trying to put exactly that 12 weeks, a period. That's what you're aiming for, and work backwards. And then you work on your first month. You're going to focus on some key exercises, okay? And you jot those down. And then on the second month, you can either increase those variables, or you can actually, let's say, you might increase the weight. So by doing so, you're actually going to, at the end of those 12 weeks, you not only really got those exercises clearly ironed out, you also would have worked on your technique. And this is a key thing for beginners. Sometimes they go like just in a china shop with workouts and like with diets, they go too mad. And in fact, they need to try and contain their emotions, work out perhaps 3 to 4 times a week, have an idea of what they're eating, but not go too mad in it, and actually just relax and just see the process take shape. Work on your technique, because often we say this in training, that if you just go and lift stuff from A to B and it's all good getting a sweat, but you can end up, hurting your knees, hurting your back, and you're not really learning the art of the craft. And by all means, further down the road, you can do a lot more fancy stuff like you might see on YouTube, like jumps and landing and so forth. But if you're starting out, it's not the right time to do it. I find work on those basic exercises, because without those, you haven't got your foundation. It's like in property. If you haven't got your foundation stuff in place, it doesn't matter what else you do. At some point, you're going to fall back. And we call this, training skills, the skills of training. Just learning the art of them and not going, and that just doing those really, really well will actually start to save progress. In fact, when I used to train, I still do, when the gyms were open, I just got one particular lady whose legs weren't developed, and we just got her focusing on some very key exercises, but just changing the variables, and it was able to really develop her legs and get them a lot more defined and toned, because she didn't have a lot of muscle at the time. So it goes to show you don't necessarily have to keep changing them. I prefer to focus on one thing and then mix it up in between.
And Michael, just for the listeners, you're much more of a person who's offline than online. Is that right, or both?
Well, I'm very much a person offline. However, I'm moving more online, if that makes sense. A lot of the stuff I did and used to do, like I said, with journaling, just come back from the basic principles that worked. However, I'm doing a lot more online now, so you might see my face around the net a bit more.
Okay, but in terms of training, you're based in West London, Ealing.
Yeah, that's right. West London, Ealing. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So look, we've got focus. It's more simple than you think. I love that title. So
It is, isn't it? So
uh,
keep it quiet,
yeah,
though.
speed up progress. That's another note I made. Do you want to focus on that? Is that the 12-week ideology you're talking about?
Yeah, it is. So often how it goes, or I'll try, and they're kind of very track your success from a 2-year period or 4-year period into a 12-week period, if that makes sense. So how do we do that? And it kind of
We lost you somewhat, Michael, there.
have you got me
Say
here?
that again. Just recap about the 12 weeks. So, because there's a book about 12 weeks as well. It's not about
Yeah.
fitness, though. It's about how you can do better things in 12 weeks segments.
Yeah, and I think when you can pull, so going back to what you might learn or finally get to that point in a 1 year, 2 year, 4 year, or some people never get there. You can actually pull it into, let's say, a 12-week period where you bring all your training together, you bring all your nutrition, not complicated, keep it simple. Your sleep's in place, your stress levels are down. And when you got all of that in harmony, you can create some incredible things in 12 weeks. I'm not saying that's the end of it, but I'm just saying that's like the point at which. So progress is really where you're going to try and work on some of the what I call the variables, which are, and there's different things you can do. There's one called once often people write down their sets and reps. So they often say how many sets and reps you can do. They're very, very not the things you want to be focusing on. By all means, focus on the rep range, but focus on the quality of the rep range. So try and what we could do, work on slowing the movements down so you're not rushing them. So for example, you're doing a lunge, you go down for 3, you hold for 2, then you pop up for 1. You're going to get a lot more out of that than just doing 12 quick ones.
Because the deceleration is where the growth is. I
That's
know you
right.
don't the word deceleration. I forgot what the word technically is.
The technical word is they call it eccentric. It's also known as a negative
Eccentric.
rep. Yeah, yeah. And if you're ever unsure, kick your elbow, grab some weights, squeeze your biceps as hard as you living well can, and then lower them down very slowly. If you're going too quick, often most people go down too quick, and if you're unsure, slow it down to like even 6 seconds. Just see how it feels when you complete a set of 12. You'll find that your biceps will be burning. Same thing with your legs, same thing with your squats, and same thing with your push-ups. If you can't do full push-ups, start with halves and just work on your technique going down. Same thing with your shoulders. And I'm more of a fan of doing it that way than trying to do it, than just going through the session. The other thing you can also vary up is you might, let's say, complete your sets, and then you might do an additional set at the end of those sets where you just call like a burnout. So you've done your 3 sets of 12, and then you're just going to do another set where you just do as many as you can. And what that's doing is it's stressing the muscle, breaking those fibers down so they grow back a bit quicker. What you really want to be doing is stressing down the muscle as much as you can and shaking it. Remember, with nutrition, that stays the same. But in workouts, that doesn't stay the same. That's why actually it's more complicated to work out than it is to eat well, even though it's also harder to execute.
So is there anything else you want to cover before we come to a conclusion? We're coming back next week as well, and I will be much more awake as well. Probably won't be listening to any property webinars or seminars or anything next Tuesday night. So I'm fully awake on the Wednesday morning.
Yeah, you'd be wide awake, Brendan. Yeah, no, just to keep the variables, you can also change the type. So you might, let's say, want to do, we call it drop sets. So you might start with a lightweight, And then without any rest, you do exactly the same exercises, but with a slightly heavier weight. Once you finish that, you keep dropping the sets. And so it just completely burns out the muscle. Or you can even do things like pyramid set, light to heavy, heavy to light, or even trisets. So you're just doing 3 exercises in a row without any rest, but making the set progressively harder. So just think about not only the exercise, how you can also stress the muscle in different ways. And you'll be surprised how much your body shape will change.
So, Michael, is there anything else you want to add before we come to a conclusion for today?
Not too
It's
much.
amazing we've got so many people listening. I have to admit, I'm definitely not on form today. So
Oh, Brendan.
we've had so many. I think this is a record for how many people we've had tune in. Not everyone stays to ground, because many people are thinking, when are we going to talk about property? And what I would say is tomorrow is going to be definitely property with Grace at 9 a.m. on Instagram. Thank goodness Grace uses Instagram. On Friday morning, I'm with Daryl. That's going to be not on Instagram. That's going to be on the traditional Facebook platform. I'll just let you speak, Michael. Sorry for the minute.
No, that's all right. It's always good to speak about other things. To conclude, we probably can cover the next section next week. Is when you're in a lockdown scenario, always think weight training. Always think HIIT training. So HIIT is high intensity interval training. So you know it's just own body weight training, and you're just doing quick spurts. Okay. Weight training is cardio. Put your hand on your heart and you feel your heart beating. Type of workouts to do in the lockdown. Keep it weight training. Keep it HIIT training. Equipment used: own body weights, resistance bands, and if you can get a pair of dumbbells, it's be really effective. They'll suit you. Don't go for too light ones. Not too heavy, so something like a 4 to or 5 to 8 is a good one to start with, depending how strong you are, and then try and do as many exercises as you can, like compound, so 2 or 1 exercises and more. Or if you haven't got the technique, just go back to those basic isolation exercises and just learn the craft well.
Okay, Michael, how can people reach you? How can they find out about yourself?
Yeah, so you can reach me via different methods. So you've got me on Facebook, just type in Michael Booth and should see me there. My website is wellbeingfitnessforthehome.com. Don't know if I should write that in. So that's wellbeing fitness, the number 4.
Yeah, I'm just typing it. Wellbeing.
Yeah.
Fitness.
Yeah, just drop me a message there. If you've got any questions, I'll respond to you. If I don't get back to you, just hang on, and I will get back very quick.
Just give me 1 second.
While you're
for the home.com, yeah?
.com, yeah.
Look, it's such a shame to come to an end when we've got still people joining, but that's what happens sometimes. Look, 8:30 next week. I promise, if Michael's available next Wednesday, I'm definitely going to be much more awake than this week, to say the least. So, Michael, if there's any final thoughts you want to say before we come to a conclusion?
No, other than just think about those things. And the other thing to just think about as well, which I'll probably cover next week, is how sleep can help you lose body fat. But I'll talk about that next week and talk about a book I'm also reading at the moment.
That's such a tempter. Well, can you say what book you're reading, or do we have to wait? Is this called a cliffhanger?
All right, I'll show you it in another. So it's called Beyond Brawn by Stuart McRobert. I think I said his name well. I'll show you it's a thick one. I have to warn you guys, but it's worth it if you can read it or have the time to. But I'll go through some of those gems next week.
Okay, I will have to. Let me just put the title in the book.
Right.
Beyond the Brawn.
Yes, BYOND Brawn. It's the 3rd edition by Stuart Muck. It's a small c Robert. I don't know if I should type that in here.
Well, hopefully I've got it right. Is that right, Michael?
Stuart McRobert. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never heard of him before. So, massive thanks for taking time out, Michael, this morning. And remember to our listeners, not Monday, tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, I'm with Grace at 9 a.m. So I'm going to get a bit of a sleep in. So, massive thanks, Michael.
No problems. You enjoy your day and everyone else's.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye.